Welcome to Time in History. I'm Professor Bill. America has long been called a land of freedom and opportunity. And much of that is true. But history is not built on ideals alone. It is built on moments, some inspiring, some uncomfortable, some impossible to ignore. Tonight, we look beyond the myth. 50 photographs, one nation, seen as it truly was. Look closely. In 1905, families like this arrived at Ellis Island with everything they owned in a single suitcase. They believed America was a place where anyone could start over. For millions, this was the first step toward a new life, a land of promise. At least, that was the dream. When the Brooklyn Bridge opened in 1883, it was the longest suspension bridge in the world. It symbolized American ambition, steel, sweat, and belief in progress. A nation building itself higher and stronger every year. By the late 1800s, the American cowboy became a symbol of freedom. The open frontier, a man, a horse, and endless land. This image would shape how the world saw America for generations. In rural Kansas, families built their lives from the soil. Hard work, faith, and self-reliance. This was the backbone of the country. A simple life, or at least, it appeared that way. At the turn of the century, New York was exploding with energy. Horse-drawn carriages filled the streets. Industry, immigration, opportunity. It looked like the future had already arrived. In 1911, Lewis Hine photographed these boys inside a Pennsylvania coal breaker. Some were 8 years old. They worked 10 hours a day, picking slate from coal with bare hands. The dust settled in their lungs before they were old enough to shave. America was building factories, railroads, and cities, and children were helping to power it. In 1890, journalist Jacob Riis entered the tenements of New York with a camera. Entire families lived in single dark rooms. Windows were rare. Clean water was not guaranteed. Tuberculosis spread easily in air that never moved. While skyscrapers began to rise downtown, thousands survived in spaces smaller than prison cells. In 1914, striking coal miners and their families lived in a tent colony near Ludlow, Colorado. They were demanding safer conditions and fair wages. The Colorado National Guard opened fire. The camp was burned. 25 people died, including women and 11 children. The American dream did not come with worker protections. Not yet. In 1932, 1 out of 4 American workers was unemployed. Banks collapsed, farms failed. Men stood in lines for bread in the richest industrial nation on earth. The country that promised opportunity could not guarantee a meal. In 1942, more than 120,000 Japanese Americans were forced into relocation camps. 2/3 were U.S. citizens. They lost homes, businesses, and savings without trial. Barbed wire replaced front porches. America defended freedom overseas while suspending it at home. In 1950, this was legal in parts of the United States. White and colored. Separate water, separate schools, separate buses. The doctrine was called separate but equal. In reality, it was separate and unequal. The American dream had rules, and not everyone qualified. In 1963, children marched for civil rights in Birmingham, Alabama. Police responded with dogs and fire hoses. The images traveled across the world. America called itself the leader of the free world, but freedom was still being negotiated on its own streets. In 1921, the Greenwood district of Tulsa was one of the most prosperous black communities in America. It was known as Black Wall Street. In less than 24 hours, it was burned to the ground. An armed white mob destroyed more than 1,200 homes and businesses. For decades, it was barely mentioned in textbooks. Prosperity was possible. Protection was not. In 1936, Dorothea Lange photographed Florence Owens Thompson in a pea pickers camp in California. She was 32 years old, with 7 children. The family survived on frozen vegetables and birds they caught themselves. The photograph became a symbol of resilience. It was also a reminder, even in America, hunger had a face. In July 1967, Detroit erupted after a police raid on an unlicensed bar. 5 days of violence followed. 43 people died. More than 7,000 were arrested. Tanks rolled through American streets. The world watched a superpower struggle with itself. May 4th, 1970. Students protested the Vietnam War. The National Guard opened fire. 13 seconds. 67 bullets. 4 students dead. They were not armed. Freedom of speech met live ammunition. In 1971, inmates at Attica Prison demanded basic rights: food, medical care, human treatment. After 4 days of negotiations, the state stormed the prison. 39 people died. Most were killed by law enforcement gunfire. Order was restored. Trust was not. In 1992, a jury acquitted 4 officers filmed beating Rodney King. Los Angeles exploded. 6 days of chaos. More than 60 dead. Over 12,000 arrests. Smoke rose above palm trees. The illusion of calm burned with it. The 1930s turned farmland into desert. Crops failed. Homes were buried in dust. Over 2.5 million people fled the Plain States. They were called Okies. Many arrived in California unwanted. The land of opportunity had borders, even inside itself. In 1972, a 9-year-old girl ran naked down a road in Vietnam after a napalm attack. The bombs were dropped by South Vietnamese planes allied with the United States. The photograph won a Pulitzer Prize. It also forced Americans to confront a war they were funding. Power has consequences, even when it's exercised far from home. March 16, 1968. American soldiers entered the village of My Lai. By noon, more than 500 civilians were dead. Most were women, children, and the elderly. There was no enemy fire, only orders, only silence afterward. It took a year for the story to surface. War doesn't only destroy cities. It destroys the story a nation tells about itself. March 7, 1965. 600 marchers crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma. They were demanding the right to vote. State troopers met them with clubs and tear gas. The day became known as Bloody Sunday. The Constitution promised equality. The bridge showed the distance between promise and reality. March 25, 1911. A fire broke out on the 8th floor of a garment factory in New York. The doors were locked to prevent theft. 146 workers died. Most were young immigrant women. Some jumped from the windows. Industry moved fast. Safety did not. In 1932, thousands of World War I veterans marched on Washington. They demanded early payment of promised bonuses. The government sent the army to remove them. Tanks rolled through camps of unemployed soldiers. Tear gas filled the air. Men who had fought for their country were treated as a threat to it. In 1955, 14-year-old Emmett Till traveled from Chicago to Mississippi. He was accused of offending a white woman. He was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered. His mother insisted on an open casket funeral. She said, "Let the world see what they did to my boy." The jury acquitted the killers. The photograph did not acquit the system. 1957. Little Rock, Arkansas. 9 black students tried to enter Central High School. A white mob screamed behind them. The governor sent the National Guard, not to protect the students, but to block them. The president had to deploy federal troops to enforce a Supreme Court ruling. Equality was law. Enforcement required soldiers. 1894. Railroad workers went on strike after wages were cut. Rent in company housing was not. The strike spread across the country. President Grover Cleveland sent federal troops. At least 30 workers were killed. Industry called it order. Workers called it war. She wasn't a student. She was 14 years old. Marianne Vecchio knelt over the body of Jeffrey Miller, shot by the National Guard. The image won a Pulitzer Prize. The bullet needed no award. It had already made history. 1933. Shantytowns rose in American cities. They were called Hoovervilles, named after the president blamed for the Depression. Families built homes from scrap wood and cardboard. This was not the frontier. This was modern America. And it was collapsing. 1971. The Pentagon Papers were leaked. They revealed that multiple administrations had misled the public about Vietnam. Trust fractured. Protests intensified. The war was thousands of miles away. The fallout was not. When truth leaks, power trembles. Richard Nixon, 1972. Washington, D.C. 5 men were arrested breaking into the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate complex. The investigation traced the operation back to the president's re-election campaign. Secret Oval Office recordings became evidence. August 1974. Nixon resigned. The first U.S. president forced from office. The system survived. Trust did not. Attica Correctional Facility. 1971. New York State. Inmates seized control of the prison yard, demanding basic human rights. Food, medical care, fair treatment. After 4 days, state police stormed the facility. 39 people were killed. Most died from law enforcement gunfire. Order was restored. The questions remained. Rodney King, 1991, Los Angeles. 4 LAPD officers were filmed beating him after a traffic stop. The footage aired nationwide. In 1992, a jury acquitted the officers. The city erupted. 63 people died. More than 12,000 were arrested. America watched itself on replay. Ruby Bridges, 1960. New Orleans, Louisiana. She was 6 years old when she walked into an all-white elementary school. Federal marshals surrounded her as crowds screamed outside. Parents pulled their children out of class. One teacher agreed to teach her, alone. For months, Ruby studied in an empty classroom. The law had changed. The hearts had not. The Hindenburg, 1937. Lakehurst, New Jersey. The largest airship ever built approached its landing tower. It was meant to prove that luxury could float across the Atlantic. Instead, it ignited in midair. 36 people died in less than a minute. The future fell from the sky in flames. Progress is impressive until it burns. Space Shuttle Challenger. January 28, 1986. Florida. Millions of Americans watched the launch live on television. 73 seconds after liftoff, the shuttle broke apart in the sky. 7 astronauts were killed. Among them, Krista McAuliffe, a schoolteacher. A lesson meant to inspire children became one they would never forget. August 28, 1963. Washington, D.C. More than 250,000 people gathered at the Lincoln Memorial. They demanded jobs, justice, and equal rights. Martin Luther King Jr. stepped forward and said, "I have a dream." The crowd listened. The world listened. America was being asked to live up to its own words. When Hurricane Katrina made landfall in 2005, New Orleans was told it was prepared. The levees were supposed to hold. They didn't. Entire neighborhoods drowned. More than 1,800 people died. Thousands waited on rooftops for rescue in a modern American city. The storm exposed more than broken infrastructure. It exposed who was left behind. When the 3 Mile Island reactor malfunctioned in 1979, officials insisted the situation was under control. A partial nuclear meltdown followed. Confusion spread faster than radiation reports. Thousands of residents fled their homes. It became the most serious nuclear accident in U.S. history. The promise of clean, limitless energy suddenly felt fragile. Power is impressive, until it slips. When a truck bomb exploded outside the Murrah Federal Building in 1995, the blast shattered downtown Oklahoma City. 19 children were inside the daycare center. 168 people were killed. The attack was carried out by an American citizen. It was the deadliest act of domestic terrorism in U.S. history at the time. The threat did not come from overseas. It came from within. When Lehman Brothers collapsed in 2008, Wall Street called it a correction. It became a global financial crisis. Millions lost homes. Millions lost jobs. Retirement savings evaporated in weeks. Banks were rescued. Families were not. The American dream had been sold on credit, and the bill arrived. On September 11, 2001, the United States woke up to a clear blue sky. 2 hijacked planes struck the World Trade Center in New York City. A third hit the Pentagon. A fourth crashed in Pennsylvania. Nearly 3,000 people were killed in a single morning. The towers fell in less than 2 hours. The skyline changed. So did the country. April 20th, 1999. Columbine High School, Littleton, Colorado. 2 students carried out a planned attack inside their own school. 13 victims were killed. 21 were injured. It was broadcast across television screens nationwide. Classrooms were no longer just classrooms. A new fear entered American schools, and it never fully left. January 6, 2021. Washington, D.C. A crowd forced its way into the United States Capitol during the certification of a presidential election. Lawmakers were evacuated. 5 people died in the aftermath. The building that symbolizes American democracy was breached from within. The world watched in disbelief. Democracy proved resilient, but not untouchable. In the early 1980s, a mysterious illness began spreading across the United States. It would later be known as AIDS. Thousands died before effective treatment existed. Fear spread faster than facts. Stigma silenced many of the sick. Hospitals filled. Government response was slow. Activists forced the nation to confront a crisis it could not ignore. In 2009, foreclosure signs covered neighborhoods across the country. Families packed belongings into boxes. Homes were reclaimed by banks. Entire streets stood half empty. The financial crisis was measured in numbers on Wall Street. Its cost was measured in living rooms and children's bedrooms. The American dream had a mortgage, and many could no longer pay it. July 2, 1964. President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act into law. Segregation in public places became illegal. Discrimination in employment was banned. It took protests, arrests, blood on bridges. The law changed because people forced it to. Progress rarely arrives quietly. July 20th, 1969. Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon. An American flag stood on another world. The same decade had seen assassinations, riots, and war. Yet 400,000 engineers, scientists, and workers built something that left Earth entirely. A nation divided still reached the stars. November 9th, 1989. The Berlin Wall fell. For decades, it had symbolized the Cold War divide. The United States had been one half of that global standoff. The wall came down not with bombs, but with people climbing it. History shifted without a battlefield. Power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits. January 20th, 2009. Barack Obama took the oath of office. The son of a Kenyan father and a Kansas mother became President of the United States. Less than 50 years earlier, federal troops had escorted children into segregated schools. The arc of history does not move quickly, but it moves. In the rubble of Ground Zero, firefighters raised an American flag. Smoke still filled the air. The city was silent, except for sirens. It was not a victory. It was defiance. America has never been flawless. It has been wounded, divided, tested, and still standing.